Howdy lifters, it's Weed, third and final presentation on nutrition and performance enhancers. So let's begin. So we'll look at dietary supplements and some performance enhancers. Just so you know, we are not going to be covering every one that is known to humanity, but we want to talk about some of the major ones. So we were talking about nutrition, the 6 essential nutrients, metabolism. So which of those sources of energy do you not want to burn, utilize, catabolize for training? Is it fats, carbs, or proteins? The answer is proteins. So remember, you can get a PhD looking at research. Sometimes they use averages, and half the group did really well, and the other half did not do really well. So it depends. You have to figure out what works best for you. Good luck with that. So dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration. The problem is they're not strictly regulated. So right now, each one of us could go out and we could create our own dietary supplement and market it. I could call it Big Daddy Weeds Protein, and I could go to a dog food factory somewhere and say, hey, whatever you don't find that is acceptable to serve to dogs, sell that to me. I'm going to mix some chocolate in it. I'm going to call it protein mix. I'm going to sell it to people who exercise, and they'll buy it because they don't care. And I could go and do that and sell that product and market it. And as long as no one has any negative health consequences for it, I could continue selling it. Not very ethical, but I could do that. So you want to be very aware of what is in the product, and you will notice that when they have claims on the side, they'll notify you that these are not necessarily been proven by scientific research, even though there will be some that say scientifically proven, but they don't tell you what science and who did it, and whether that person failed chemistry or whatever the consequences of that are. So just be aware, buyer beware, user be aware, etc. So we talked about the 3 components of metabolism. The big one is 60 to 75% of our daily metabolic needs, which changes. And hopefully you took time and figured out what your BMR is in the web page for the second presentation. So we want to look at the reasons, concerns, and health risks of performance-enhancing substances. Provide reliable information to students based on the risks and benefits of performance-enhancing substances, and evaluate supplements marketed for performance benefits. And on the Nearpod presentation, you can check out the World Anti-Doping List and the NCAA banned list, which you don't have to worry about unless you're going to be competing at the world level, the Olympics, or the NCAA. So just as a point, recovery, taking time between training sessions is one of the most overlooked aspects, because we think that, well, if 2's good, 3's got to be better. So you can see what the benefits of recovery days are right here. So some of the items that we're going to be talking about are branched chain amino acids, hormones, steroids and HGH, creatine, protein, and HMB. And depending on who you talk to, some of these are magical and some of them are going to make your ears fall off. So you want to be aware, where is the source? I'm going to be trying to provide sources that are reliable and scientific, and you can judge for yourself whether they or not they work. So this is LabDoor. There'll be a presentation on that. LabDoor is an independent company that they test different items, and you can go in there and find out protein and find out, based on LabDoor's testing, does what they say on the label match what is in the product. And it's a good source. I've used it a number of times. My wife and I were somewhere shopping, and she wanted to buy some sort of dietary supplement. I said, hold it, wait. Let me go to LabDoor, and so we chose the best that was there based on that. So if it's fish oil, they go through and test different types of fish oil, and whether or not it is 100% fish oil or 50% fish oil, or whether the fish oil is rancid, whatever that is, that's what they do at no charge for you to use that. So I actually changed the protein powder that I used because the one that I was using wasn't as effective as the one that I'm currently using. Effective in terms of not getting results because it's multifactorial, but in terms of what's actually in there. So anabolic steroids are hormones. So whether they are natural or synthetic, they are derivatives of the male sex hormone testosterone. That's why males in general tend to have greater muscle mass than females. Not every male has greater muscle mass than females. Just want to point that out there. But generally speaking, that's why. So we have two different effects. We have anabolic effects right here, which is tissue building. So we increase muscle mass. Males tend to have lower body fat. Again, that's based on hormones. We have increased protein synthesis and increased calcium in the bones. The androgenic effects also can come from using steroids, both natural and synthetic, which is we have growth of the penis and other sex male glands, and that is because when little boys through adolescence and puberty become men, they get deepening of their voice, they get increased body hair, etc. All of that is based on testosterone. And women, beware that you can have similar effects depending on what type of steroid you use and how much you use. So just be aware of that. So again, there's a number of people who use anabolic steroids. Recently, the most recent that I saw, I don't have that somewhere, is the typical steroid user on college campus is not the athletes. It's the fraternity brothers who are trying to pack on a little weight so that they can be more socially engaging on the weekends at their fraternity parties. So it also depends on hormones in your training and your genetics as well. So you can see what happens here, changes in lean body mass based on the dose of a specific steroid in this research done by Hoffman in 2002. So there are potential psychological effects. Not every person who does anabolic steroids has roid rage. I think it's somewhat kind of like alcohol in terms of alcohol. People who drink alcohol, some people become aggressive, some people become lovable, some people become different things. So it depends on what your personality is, and this kind of makes it better or worse. And so there are some people who are under the influence of steroids. If you've ever watched little boys and little girls, just as an observation, my mom was at the church where I went to when I was a kid. She was the superintendent of the primary Sunday school department. And after church, I would go and I would talk to my mom, wait for her to be done. And the little girls were sitting there and in their dresses and nice and talking to each other. And the little boys, not every little boy, but some of the little boys are poking and prodding and punching each other. And I believe that has to do somewhat with steroids. Males tend to be more aggressive. Not all of them, but that happens. And there's also adverse effects. There's an increase you can see here in cardiovascular disease and endocrine, in reproductive factors, increase in acne, liver function. If you are a male and you're not fully grown, it can close the growth plates prematurely. And there's also some psychological issues there. So there are some adverse effects if you choose to do that, depending on the dosage and how often you use that. Currently, anabolic steroids are Schedule 3 on the Federal Drug Code, and so that means they are illegal without a prescription. There is a large black market. There's also pre-hormones, which you can look at, and everything else. You could go across the border theoretically into Mexico, and you could buy steroids over the counter because they do not restrict those. I don't know about Canada, but that's a much longer drive than Mexico from Texas. So there are dietary supplements, moving on from the hormones, and there is some research for certain dietary supplements. They can have a androgenic effect just like anabolic steroids. A good source of information is the International Society of Sports Nutrition by Dr. Jose Antonio. He has some interesting articles there. You can check that out. So creatine is one of those supplements, and creatine is a cell volumizer, and so what that means is that it makes the actin and myosin, the sliding filament theory, makes them spread apart as far as possible when you have water in those. And so they've done numerous research, and it is effective somewhat for anaerobic type performance, and it also has shown that there is a increase in muscle size, not like anabolic steroids, but there is an increase in muscle size again because of the cell volumizing that goes on with that. For aerobic activities, no evidence that it's effective. When I was at a conference recently, I was talking to a guy who has his mother who's almost 90 years old. She takes creatine every day because there's some research, which I have yet to look at, that it's beneficial for brain function. So because of that, I have started taking creatine again. And once you have that first 5 days of loading, then you just take 1 scoop a day. And I went to Labdoor and I found the highest rated one, and that's the one that I purchased. So there have been no adverse effects besides gastrointestinal disturbances because of using that creatine. Dietary supplements, another one is branched chain amino acids, which can be found in protein. Back in the 80s when my oldest brother was into lifting, he took the big horse pills that had BCAAs, and so you'll hear a lot about that. And branched chain amino acids are the building blocks for proteins. HMB, you can read that, hydroxy B-methylbutyrate. There is no recent studies that support HMB as a positive impact. The previous research was a little sketchy, and that's the thing that you need to look for. Remember, we talked about Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, and diet affords us the opportunity to become experts within the only laboratory that ultimately matters. Remember, you're a sample size of 1. Protein is very popular, and is it effective? Somewhat. What's your training program like? That would be more important than just the protein. And from all of the presentations and articles that I have read, we'll talk about what the optimal is. There is whey protein, which is from dairy product, and casein is from dairy products as well. Those of you who know the nursery rhyme, Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Right here, that's whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and scared Miss Muffet away. So this video will be available to check out on the webpage for part 3. So this is a key term, ergogenic aid, any substance, mechanical aid, or training method that improves sport performance. For the purpose of this chapter, the term refers specifically to pharmacological aids. That means things that you're going to eat. Medicines, food. So the recommendation is, before you work out, you want to have approximately 25 grams of protein, including branched chain amino acids. Now, if you remember, you are a sample size of 1. Research that is being done, they find out what is optimal for the group. Remember, you are a unique individual with unique hormones, unique levels of activity, unique genetics. So maybe you work best with 30 or 22.5. I don't know, but the recommendation is 25. So if you're taking 75 grams at a time, that might not be the most beneficial for you, but do it for a while and see if the results occur. During the workout, you want to include branched chain amino acids, and you want a ratio of 2 grams of carbs to 1 gram of protein during that time. Now, if your workout's 5 minutes, you're not really going to use that. And then post-workout, and again, there's a lot of debate on this, the anabolic, which is building, catabolism is breaking down. It's within 2 hours after you work out. The optimal amount, again, 25 grams of protein within that 2 hour window after completing the workout. And again, if that's, no offense, you're going to Planet Fitness and pushing and pulling a couple levers on a machine, you're probably not going to have the significant impact of doing real weight and an extensive program. The recommendation is 2 to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight for hypertrophy. So take your body weight, divide it by 2.2, and then multiply it by 2 to 4. So if I weigh 180 pounds right now, and I divide that by 2.2, that is 81.81 kilograms. Let's say 82 kilograms. So what I want to do based on this, each and every day, I want to get between 164 and 324, or excuse me, 28 grams a day. And if you're taking those in 25 grams of protein per serving a day, do the math. 175 grams divided by 25 is 7. So that means you need to have 7 feedings a day. If you're doing the 4 grams, you need to increase more than 25 because you're never getting that. If you're getting 300 some, if you take in 50 grams at a time, that's over 6 servings a day. So your new job, if you want to go to these because you're trying to get hypertrophy, your new job is eating. So here is a specific steroid called nandrolone, and this is a research in 2004, and what they did is they had a experimental group and a control group. The control group had a placebo, and they gave them a strength and conditioning program. And notice, during the 8 weeks of use in this training program, the people using steroids gained 2.5 kilograms. So that's 5 pounds of muscle. This group here almost gained 2.2 pounds. And then after 14 weeks after stopping taking steroids, they lost a little over a pound, and these individuals actually gained. So again, this is one study, one time that happened with the control and the experimental. So you can go to GNC or other places and you can get pro-hormones, which are one step away from a steroid. And I'm not a chemistry major, but that's what they do. So the idea is if you take this, it's going to easily convert into those male hormones and you're going to have a benefit from that. And these are totally legal for you to use. So insulin, there's also insulin growth factor 1 and 2, which helps with muscle. And so there's some people that believe using that. Again, I would not use that, but some people do because size is the prize. HGH is another one of those controlled substances that is one of those master hormones. When you were young, you had more HGH when you were growing. And then once you reach adulthood and you're finished growing, there's not very much HGA. It's a minimal amount, a nominal amount. So there's some people who have gone to using HGH. Now it's able to be used synthetically, but before you had to get it out of cadavers. And again, it's one of those master hormones, and so if you take HGH, the thought is that it's going to stimulate all those other hormones and help you grow. But the concern you have is acromegaly, which is you're taking HGH, which helps your bones grow. You continue growing your bones, and they're not getting any longer, so they're getting thicker, and so that's an unpleasant side effect of that. So remember, we were talking about physical literacy throughout. The goal is for you to move well so that you can move often and have a health-enhancing level of activity for your life. And then, are there concerns and benefits to using performance-enhancing substances? Well, it depends on what you value. And then the information that I tried to give you was reliable. Remember, depending on what source you go to, I'm going to post the NSCA document their position statement on anabolic steroids, which they're like, no, you don't want to use those. And then there's an article earlier in the presentation, should steroids be legal? It's a personal trainer, movement expert from Mexico who talks about his position on that. And then remember, can you evaluate based on what your goals are, how much money you want to spend, and the effectiveness of those? So buyer beware. All right. The quiz will be open, so check out D2L and make sure you use that 2 opportunities to maximize your score. Take care, move well, move often.